Hi, and welcome to a little talk that I'll be doing today for about 50 minutes or so, which is all about reviews, user reviews, specifically for non-specific platforms. This should be applicable to any platform in which reviews take place, and that is a lot of them, as we'll see. But I just want to start with a little bit about me and why you should trust what I'm saying as opposed to someone else that isn't me. So, hi everyone, my name is Darcy Smith. I work for a little studio called League of Geeks, but at one stage I was a child and now I'm not. And over, I guess, throughout high school, I hated it, and then I left and became a customer service agent and dispute resolution guy for corporate companies, which is weird. It's a weird thing that I decided to do, but I remember at that time thinking, if I can learn to communicate with people that hate me, then I can do probably many jobs. And that sort of worked out pretty well, that mentality at least. On the side, I decided to do some comedy stuff because I like interacting with people. I like provoking reactions, and that was fun. But over time, the day stuff sort of became grating and it wasn't fulfilling. So I decided to move on to something a little more fulfilling. I guess the comedy allowed me to hone in on what was important to me, and that is creating something that people can enjoy. So I went to school, studied game design, and got a sweet little gig at a studio called League of Geeks. League of Geeks are the best people. They're so talented, and I wouldn't be here if not for them, because they constantly push me to be better and inspire me to be better. We are hiring as well, so keep an eye out. Maybe you can be that person that inspires me as well. When I started at League of Geeks, I was a QA representative for Armello. By QA representative, I mean just the only person there doing QA for a while. And then when my QA battery ran out, essentially, I moved on to community management and interacting with people and sort of talking for the studio and talking for the game and taking communications and relaying that to the studio. So if you've all heard about Armello, I'm sure, because we never shut up about it. But if you haven't checked it out since we launched, or maybe you backed it or something, thank you so much. But we've been working on the game for 3 years since it launched in 2015. And it's so good. It's a really good game, and it's a game that's made from love, and we still fight over which animal should hold which weapon, and it's a very fulfilling game to work for. So Armello is really interesting because it is a game as a service, so it's something that we've been supporting ongoing, and it's not one of those fire and forget games. We didn't launch it and then walk away and move on to the next thing. We've been adding value over time, and we've successfully released on a bunch of different platforms: Steam, iOS, Android, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Which also makes Armello a really interesting case study for how different communities behave, because it's the same game across all of these different platforms. I think it's really provided a lot of perspective for me as someone that interacts with communities. I can really see how those communities sort of differ. I'll be referring a lot to Armello and as time throughout this talk to sort of verify and back up things like wild claims that I might make and other games as well. But this talk is about user reviews specifically. The joy of user reviews are that they are not opt-in. You don't get a choice. So you can either care about them or not. I urge you to care about them, and hopefully I can sort of show you why it's valuable. You'll probably look at them anyway. If you have a game on a storefront and you get reviewed, you will look at them because we're all slightly insecure, and those reviews they'll come through and they'll hit you in the middle of the night. You'll be up at 1 a.m. going like, why do they care? This is not a talk about media reviews. This is not a talk about press. just a heads up. It's like checking to see someone's like, oh, screw this then, like walks out. It's user reviews, everyone. Your review score is an indication of your success or your failure. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it's one of the few metrics that is sort of, you look at that, you look at your score, and you go, you instantly forge a perception of how good a game is going to be. It can literally make or break your game. So throughout this talk, I'm going to be talking about 4 different topics specifically, and if I do it well, then you'll have a better understanding of all of them. The first is why reviews and your score are important. The second is who's actually reviewing a game and why have they said those horrible things. The third is how to interpret and understand those horrible things. And the fourth is how to protect and increase the perception of your studio and your game and your review score specifically. So, some basic terminology to get us started. I'll be referring to reviews, specific reviews, and one specific review is one person's perspective, and typically that has a score attached to it, a positive or a negative or a star rating, and a rating is like an aggregate rating across a storefront, essentially. This is going to help us talk as well. This is going to help you understand what I'm talking about. So each platform is different to a degree as to how they operate. So Steam has a percentage of positive reviews essentially, and that is summarized into different brackets like overwhelmingly positive, very positive, mostly positive, and the rest. iOS, so mobile and console, except for Switch, have a star rating. Switch is new, so I assume that they'll do something similar and implement a rating system moving on. But for the time being, they don't, and that's fine. That's all good. One less thing to look at. And also here you have like the opportunity to respond to reviews. So on console you can't respond to reviews, but on mobile and Steam you can. And it's important to note on mobile you can actually reset your review score. So if everything's gone awfully wrong and you need to like just light a match and like burn it and start fresh, you can do that with an update. So just keep that in mind when I'm talking about things. When I'm talking about responding to reviews, obviously it's not something that you should be doing on console. So, why reviews are important? If we're going to do anything with them, we should understand their value, why you should care. So, basically, at a really ground level, specific reviews hold incredible information about your game. So reviews are a channel where people provide feedback, and in many cases they're an escalation point. So if someone has tried to communicate something that they want to you or to the community and it hasn't worked, and they'll take it to the next level. And crafting games is about crafting experiences, and what better way to understand whether or not you've crafted a good experience than a recount or an expression of that experience. That's where people go to express their experiences, which you're trying to create. Even just one review will teach you a little bit, and if you wade through the swamp that is reviews, you start to really understand how people are enjoying your game and what interests them and what grabs them, what's fun and what's annoying. They love to talk about what's annoying. Your review score is somewhat equal to your public perception. It's a really good indicator of what your public perception is. And a really interesting thing that happens with review scores or your game's rating is that they transcend our language shifts. So one review is one person's opinion. They thought it was good or bad. They thought it was 3 stars. They thought it was 5 stars. And that combines to a total rating. Our language shifts and goes, that's a 4-star game. It's a game on the storefront. You'll see that it has like Armello. It's a 4-star game. On Steam, it's a game that's mostly positive. It transcends from an objective opinion or a subjective opinion into a collective opinion, and then people sort of take that and extrapolate it into sort of like undeniable truth. So the third point, I think, in this bracket, I think it's the third, that reviews are contagious. funny thing about that is that human behaviour is contagious. People like to dress the same. People like to eat similarly to people around them, and that's a well observed thing that happens with humans in general. So if a review score on your page is overwhelmingly positive, people don't feel as justified or comfortable critiquing that game because they feel like they're not blending in with what the common opinion is. So if you care about the smaller reviews, then you can sort of stop a butterfly effect from occurring and sort of creating a larger perception of your game. An interesting study, which you've probably all heard of, is I think it's like the elevator experiment, which is if a bunch of people are standing in an elevator and they're looking the wrong way, and someone, obviously everyone who's not in, like the woman in the center is unaware of what's happening. Everyone else is a cast who's been told to look in the wrong way in the elevator, not staring towards the door. And eventually, like almost reliably, people just turn around. And the quote that this woman has is, "I actually thought that you all knew something that I didn't." So if you can sort of protect your review score and care about those reviews from the beginning, you set the tone where people don't want to disagree, or it's harder to disagree because they assume a fault in their own knowledge. So, positive reviews sort of equate to downloads and sales, not directly. It's not like positive review cash, woohoo! It's more like positive reviews interact with algorithms on storefronts, which basically those algorithms are trying to show people the best games. So if your game has a good review score, then your game is more likely to be discovered. You'll see like different promotions come up on the App Store that say, highly rated games, etc. An example of this is something I want to say this with a grain of salt because store algorithms are a crazy beast that I don't claim to fully understand. But something that I've observed is if our review score is higher on Steam, it comes up quicker when you search for it. So I've noticed that if you type ARM and our review score happens to be quite high at that time, sometimes it appears at the bottom. And if our review score is lower, you'll have to get to the E in Armello before it actually appears. So that's an interesting and sort of tangible thing that you can hold on to. So to recap as to why reviews are important and to move on, is that reviews contain information about your game. Your review score equates to the public perception of your game, and a positive review score adds to discoverability and just adds to sales and downloads, etc. Topic 2 or chapter 2. I like to call them chapters because it sounds cooler that way. Who reviews and why? So it's been a really good thought experiment for us at Log to talk about this in probably way too much detail. And I think that the biggest, maybe the most important takeaway from this talk in general is that less than 5% of people or players review your game. So that means that out of 100 people, 5 people determine how your game is perceived on the store. That's huge. Well, it's not huge. It's small, but it's a big deal. And it's really interesting to me that it is so small, but it has so much weight. And another interesting point is that this is a detail from a study. Oh, actually, I just want to go back just for a second. I say less than 5%. Most of our platforms are way lower than that, actually. So I think that the highest reviewed platform, which took me by crazy surprise, is Android. Weird. But that was only close to 4%, I believe. Where it wouldn't be weird for your game to have a 1% review rate or something similar. These numbers are pulled from a study, and that study is the empirical study of game reviews from of the Steam platform. And I would do a serious injustice to try and pronounce the names of the people that that did that study. But another detail from that study is that the median playtime before positive reviews on Steam, this is a Steam stat specifically, is 15.5 hours. But the review score, I guess the time to review for negative reviews is 6.6. So take this as you will. Like it's definitely changed my perception of where we should be focusing our efforts. It seems like, you know, up to the 7-hour mark is a really important thing for Steam, and I'm sure that's smaller on mobile as well. So yeah, it's interesting to think about that. Like, you know, when you're trying to hone or improve a detail about your game that's only relevant to people that have played for 50 hours, you may want to reconsider your options in what's worth your time. So there are a bunch of different motivations for why people review games. And I pulled these motivations from a different study that was quite recent. I think it's 2016. The study's called What Motivates People to Write Online Reviews and Which Role Does Personalities Play? I don't have anything about different personalities, but I did grab their schools for why people review things online. And that study's by J.M. Rensink. The first one is self-enhancement. It's basically celebrating a good decision. I did something cool, like I got this game and I feel good about that. And I'm going to be like, hell yeah, this game's rad, I rock, continue. Second one is venting negative feelings. So go like, this game sucks and I'm mad about it. And I'm here to talk about how I'm mad about it. It feels good to get things off your chest. Third point is helping other players. So people are like, oh, like this game rocks, I need to make sure that people check this out. They want to encourage other players to do things that they do. Warning other players, the inverse of that, going, this game sucks and stay away because it was a terrible time, it's not worth your time. Social benefits. So there's an inherent sort of, street cred that comes with being right on the internet. And people want to connect with other people. People are constantly finding ways to connect with other people. And reviews nowadays, like people, you know, there's a funny button to rate Steam reviews for a reason. Because, you know, Steam is to some degree like a social network. Helping the company. So this one's rare, but it happens. But they see your company and they see what you're up to and they go, you know what? They deserve this. It's not about them, it's about the company. And advice seeking. So maybe they've hit a problem, maybe they don't understand something, and they're wanting to open a dialogue about how to overcome that thing. So, reviews, I guess that's helpful to think about the different drivers and sort of comprehend why people are talking about things. What I found really valuable, and I tried to find where I came up with, well, I didn't come up with this phrase. I found it in some like crusty old blog about like reviewing like supermarket shopping items or something. And it was like, it just hit me, and it's like a mantra that I use when talking about reviews and why people review, is that reviews come from dramatic events. Dramatic events are basically the point in which you create an opinion about something. It's a turning point. It's like a revelation. It's the point that you realise that something is special or something is shit. And that's the moment where people go like, I need to do something. That's the step before the drivers that I gave you earlier. It's like the inception of your motivation to stand up and be like, I got to do something about this. So dramatic events are basically like a great climax, like an epic ending to a game. You're like, I never saw that coming. That was awesome. That was truly special. I've got to give this game a thumbs up. An observation of excellence. It could just be like, damn, I'm enjoying this. Wait, the music is awesome in this game. Like, and someone might just have a revelation and be like, this is truly world class. And they go, awesome, I'm going to review this. Exceeding expectations is like, how am I still playing this game for 70 hours? Like, I was expecting like 20, and then you get to hours like 70 and you're like, awesome, I'm going to throw these people a review because this is a special experience. The inverse of that is sort of an anticlimax. You get to the end of the game, you're like, all of that work for this? Like, why do I care? And then, the observation of mediocrity. You're roaming around, the music in the game's like, this is grating. Like, I'm not enjoying this. You have a realization, you have a dramatic moment where you're like, you understand and you formulate your opinion. You're ready to talk about it. And then not meeting expectations is similar. But the point at the end of the day is you should be considering what dramatic moments you have in your game. And the biggest and most obvious version of a dramatic moment that I can explain or communicate is bugs in your game. If someone plays your game for half an hour and they're approaching the end and they get a bug that ruins the game, then what an anticlimax, Like that, it is something that doesn't even exist in the world. It's a layer outside of your game that has interrupted play. And that is a big negative review driver. So we've talked about dramatic events, and we've talked about how humans want to connect and have similar opinions. And we've talked about how small an audience needs to be in order to sculpt the perception of the game. So I just want to do a little sidestep here and talk about something that's really interesting to me, and I hope that it's interesting to you, which is review bombing. Review bombing is a really interesting phenomenon that's pretty awful. The information that I provided you so far are the building blocks to fully understand how review bombing is possible, essentially. It's a really small group of motivated people that band together to alter the perception of a game. They're mad about something typically, and they want to. They're either trying to seek justice or change, and they band together to take action, and that action is typically a review. And when banded together, like we've seen, if you understand that it impacts your ability to search for games, like on storefronts, it impacts people's perception. When's the last time you've bought a game that's rated mostly negative on Steam, or a 1-star game off the App Store? I don't know about you, but if I see that, I know this stuff, so I look into it. But a lot of people would just cruise on by, So a couple of interesting case studies about review bombing. One that's really happening right now, essentially, is Total War Rome 2 by Creative Assembly. So they've introduced some faction. I haven't played this game. I've just looked at it and the drama surrounding it. You can see where the reviews have all happened at the end of that graph there, which is just a huge red spike of reviews. There is roughly probably up to 3,000 reviews about the issue. The issue is basically that a bunch of people hate women or something. I don't get it. But they have banded together to take action. But the really important thing about this is that it's only 3,500 tops people that have banded together to communicate this. And I've checked into sort of the Steam numbers, and you can go to steamdb.info. It's not entirely accurate, but that is a tiny percent of how many people own their game. If they've done 300,000 units, which I guarantee you they have, that means that 1% of people are motivated to bomb their game, yet their game is displayed as negative on the Steam store. That's not a jab at Steam, for the record. There are awesome features that are coming into Steam that basically show you when games are being review bombed and stuff like that. Seems to be really important to them at the moment. But it's just interesting to me more than anything that sort of so few people can sculpt such a perception or modify such a perception. Another sort of tangible example of this is Darkest Dungeon. You can see that there's one quite long stick. And this one's really interesting to me because there's not that much drama about it as far as I know, or at least not on this portion of the world, but they released a bad Korean localization. And I don't know about all of you, but Korean sales for Armello are a tiny portion of what we actually sell. Yet one poor localization of their game among many with much larger audiences for that period of time sent the game into a negative review score. It's really interesting. It's really interesting that that's how review scores are formulated. So, to recap, customers want to be heard. They want to communicate for whatever reason that may be. A very small portion of your players determine your review score. And think about reviews as dramatic events. Think about what's provoking them to take action. Also avoid being review bombed if you can. So 3. This is we're going to talk a little bit about how to start. Like, okay, they exist, they're important, we're starting to understand them. What can we start to do to interact with these? How can we sort of extract information to actually use? So on a really ground level, and this is when you're wading through reviews on a review-to-review basis, read between the lines. Like, if someone's like, the dog in your game sucks, don't be like, cool, I deleted the dog, awesome, have a good day. Like you got to understand that people are actually, for the most part, just like emotionally charged, and what they're saying about your game isn't necessarily the solution. It's not the thing that's necessarily wrong. You need to sort of read between the lines and understand what they're meaning. What dramatic event have they encountered? Like, you know, if people keep complaining about the clouds in your game, is it an issue of them? Do they hate clouds, or is it that they want to see things that are through the clouds? You know. And a really interesting thing from the Steam study that I mentioned earlier is that 42% of reviews, provide information that's been determined to be valuable to developers. And negative reviews are more likely than positive reviews to contain actionable or valuable information. That seems pretty accurate to me. A lot of reviews are just drive-bys, like people just want to plant their flag and run away. But a lot of the time there will be something, and you'd be surprised as to like how much value you can get from something seemingly innocuous. And if you take the time to just like look at holistically how someone's feeling and why they're feeling that way and why they're motivated to come to you, that will really help you interpret the review, essentially. So identify trends. Like, there's no point in viewing these reviews in isolation. They mean far less to just like look at one review and then start taking action or drafting actions accordingly. You need to start linking threads together, and you know, just like keep an eye out if there are crashes. This is Android reviews, so it's like, of course they're crashing. There are like 1 billion devices. How are you meant to test on all of those things? But and I picked these out. We actually don't get that many negative reviews for crashes. Anyway, the point is that you need to start taking steps to understand what people are talking about in the form of like trends and waves. And I believe that to be a critical part of my job as a community manager is to sort of to navigate that stuff. And this is optional, but I 100% sort of want to motivate you to do this. This is something that I do, and some people thought that this was the highlight of the talk that I did last year, which is convert reviews into data. So what better way to start tracking data than tracking the data? So I basically take every single negative review we get on Steam, and I sort of tear it apart and just tick columns based on what they've mentioned. And this has been hugely valuable. This allows us to distill, you know, the average playtime for people that reviewed like per month or whatever. Like maybe we're getting more negative reviews in Chinese, and we have a localization problem. This will help you guide your game to sort of success, essentially. It allows you to keep your finger on the pulse in a way that you can't by just like hanging out in reviews and just calling like pot shots and design meetings. So, in terms of turning reviews into actions, we know to read between the lines, like really try and digest and absorb what people are saying about your game on a micro level. We want to identify trends. We want to start pulling taking things that are common and start grouping them. And then, if you can, start tracking them and really pay attention to what's happening in your game through its life cycle. 4, the big one. Improving your rating. So this is about protecting and improving your review score where possible. I want to emphasize that as far as I know, and it's true for Armello, and it's true for most games, I believe, your review score should dip over time. And that's just because the game ages. The reviews should be, your game should be less impressive with age. And that's fine. That's healthy. But we can fight it, and we can fight the good fight. So, action feedback, really literal ground level, if people have good ideas, and it's something that seems to be something that people want, and you can do that. There's no reason why you can't just step out and be like, yeah, your idea, yes, we're gonna implement that. So, an example of that sort of, for us specifically, is the example I gave earlier. A lot of people complained about fog in Armello, and eventually we reduced the fog. And that was not, the game was never designed to essentially be, the fog was by design. There was nothing wrong with it. We wanted to really sculpt the lens in which people view our game. But at some point, if people keep complaining about it, then maybe it's impacting people in a way that you can't comprehend, or maybe you're not hitting the mark with what you intended. A similar but equally important point that I want to raise is guide design with feedback. The difference between this is that the actioning feedback is sort of taking the inception, someone else's inception, idea inception, and then making it true. This is keeping your design team or whoever is designing your game. A lot of studios say oh, we don't have designers. It's cool, who's doing it then? So whoever's calling the shots, whoever's deciding what you're working on, I think that the community manager and someone who's responsible for dealing with reviews and that sort of stuff should be there to keep people in check. A big review driver for Armello is that the game is quite random, and a negative review driver, I should say. So if the design team are yeah, cool, we're going to implement a 20-sided dice, and you might die or you might win the game, I'd be well, I mean, we already get so many complaints about negative reviews. Do we really want to push that point and make the issue worse? You're a representative as a community manager. You're a representative for the perception of your game. You're a representative for the community, and you need to sort of uphold that. Treat reviews like analytics. So the spreadsheet that I showed you earlier has been really, really valuable for us, because you can see when things are popping up. And in one case, this year, I was able to determine that the game, that our bug detection, our analytics weren't working as intended, because the review influx was noticeable in terms of its increase. If I didn't track reviews like I do, I wouldn't have as easily recognized that we had a serious problem in our game. And I guess reviews are, to a degree, if you track them correctly, indisputable in terms of analytics. If people are there complaining about bugs and saying that your game isn't working, you can't be oh, well, the analytics say that it's fine. Well, it's well, this person sent a screenshot. We have 10 reviews in the last couple of days about it. It is indisputable. And I guess for community work in general, it's really hard to just say things should be a way and be well, the community feels this way, because people don't work like that. You need to be the community feels this way, and this is a spreadsheet that shows that. If you don't have the spreadsheet, then you're just a person making a claim about something that you do, and it's far less effective to communicate that way within your studio. It's far harder to convince people, essentially. And to that point, Communicate to the people that are reviewing your game. Communicate on a micro level. Like if you've got a review crisis, if your review score has dipped because of a build that didn't go as planned or a decision that wasn't very graceful, tell people what you're doing. Tell people like on a micro level, but if it's something that's huge, like a huge problem that's affected many people, communicate to everyone that you recognize what's going on. Because, I mean, if 5% of people maximum are reviewing a game and a portion of those are talking about an issue, you better believe that so many other people are experiencing that issue but just not reviewing about it, you know? So it's really important to open those communication gates and talk to people. So this is a couple of hot response tips. This is the loosest slide I've got, by the way. But keep it cool. So basically, like, keep calm. If you're worked up, if you're annoyed, like when responding to people, it's pointless. Like if you're going to start an argument with someone on the internet, like you're just going to waste so much time. And trust me, people don't like to be told that they're wrong. It's not about being right at all. Explain your actions. Tell them what you're doing. Like, hey, you know what? You're right. Like that sucks. The game's that way. It could even be like, listen, we're not going to fix it, but I really appreciate that you've spoken to us about it, and I see where you're coming from. You know. So even if the action is nothing, just tell them. Open that communication, and then empathize. Understand that they've experienced a dramatic event. Understand that they've reached out for a reason, and just try and meet them there, you know, and keep it breezy. Very important one. Very different to keep your cool, I'm sure, but keep your language light. You don't want to be like, I sincerely appreciate the time that you've taken to reach out about this. You just want to be like, hey, what's up? Like, it's all fine. You just want to make it a stress-free conversation. You're just cruising by to let them know what's going on. And this is the best way I have found to converting people's reviews. People do not want to be told that they're wrong. People don't like admitting that they're wrong. People don't like taking a thumb that's upside like down and then going, you know what? You're right. Boom. It's a good game. Like, people don't like that. But the best way to make people do that is to just try and show that you're a human and just keep an interaction really light and pleasant. On a larger scale, like, just reach out to your community. If you've got an issue, just be like, hey everyone, there's a stability issue, we're dealing with it. Like, and if we consider that reviews are, in a lot of cases, escalation points, that they try and communicate through other means and then go, or like try and do some digging, find no information and be like, well, I'll post a negative review because they're trying to express themselves. If you can catch them before they do that, if you can catch them before their confusion bubbles over into sort of an annoyance, then if you just go, hey, we've got this issue, we're working on it, people go like, cool, like I get it, understand. They give you time to work it out. And the final point for trying to increase your review score is to consider everyone. As we've seen, one poor localization for one language that is considered to be a minor portion of sales can dump your review score overnight. When making games and when making alterations to games, especially a game that's already available, be really careful about who you're motivating. Because if you motivate one person, if that's the 5 people are the people that are going to review, and you motivate 1 in 100 people, if you motivate 1% of your audience to say something, it can either be catastrophic or it can alter your perception positively and create ripples through your game and your community for indefinitely, essentially. And that's my talk. So I think how'd I do time-wise? I think I got time for, we got 10? Nice. Bang on. That's awesome. Does anyone have any questions? I'd love to answer some questions. Yeah.
In terms of the current review climate, do you think there's still a place for critic reviews, like from journalists, in addition to user reviews? Or do you think user
User reviews will never, like, there's definitely a place for both. Like, there's a weird thing that's happening with like media reviews in the sense that I think a lot of people are now turning to content creators and personalities that they understand and tastes that they can really like holistically look at. I think it's sort of adjacent, but I think that user reviews will always be important because you need to tap into the consensus of what people think about something. We don't need to, but I think it's hugely helpful. I find that in a lot of cases, review scores are really spot on. Like, I think that they're a really good representation of what a product is like or what a game is like. I think that they serve two different purposes, and I think that both are really important. Which is like, it sounds like such a non-answer. I feel like such a cop-out for that, but it's what I believe. Up the back?
How do you go about parsing non-English reviews?
Google Translate is bomb. It's so good. Like, I had this revelation a couple of months ago where I was like, oh damn, more reviews are coming in, but they're in other languages. And I'm like, hold on, there's a service that translates things on the fly. And I use Google Translate all the time, like for different communications, like just to check what like folks in Russia are saying about Armello. And then I was like, I use it almost on a day-to-day basis. And I was just like, well, I can just use this and it's fine. Because a lot of the time I'm just checking things that are mentioned, you know, and positive, like reviews are really like, sort of, when you get into it, they're really sort of easy to digest. They're like, I hit a bug, or I got disconnected, or the dice are awesome, but like this is sucky. Like you can actually like the translation that you get from Google Translate is almost better written than the English reviews that come through that are written in English. So Google Translate's awesome. Yeah.
So in Armello, there's a feature called give feedback and bug reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked at this in balancing user reviews?
Can you repeat that question?
Turning reviews into actions, how does that, in terms of user feedback, how does that translate into actions in terms of balancing? There's bug feedback and then there's user reviews. How did it?
Oh, like, you know, like all of the communications that we get, we're a really open company and a really open studio, and all of the reports that we get, someone looks at. And those trends are taken on board. So the bug reports and give feedback that goes through to QA, and QA are constantly getting involved in terms of design and like suggesting fixes or trying to solve friction points and that sort of thing. So reviews fall into more my bucket, but QA handles a lot of that in-game communication. There's a question here, yeah.
You talked a bit about developer responses. I was
Yeah.
wondering, how do you choose which negative ones to respond to, or do you just respond to every negative review?
I try to respond to as many as possible, and it's a really good question, actually. I'm glad you asked it. It's hard. It's hard because you don't know who's... First of all, getting conversions on reviews is like the wild, wild west. Like, you'll never know if you can actually like change someone's opinion. A lot of the time, reviews are like the end of the line. For like a negative review is the end of the line where they're like, this game sucks and I'm out, peace. And you kind of like, you'd be really lucky to convert them. It does happen. But the point is, I try and respond to as many as possible because it's sort of like a bit of a game to me, especially like if there's one that's like especially vile or something. I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm just here to say that like the game's like totally sweet again and like it's fixed and have a sick one. I hope you jump in. But typically just people that have remorse. If you can recognize remorse in a review and be like, I would love to give this game a positive review. People say that all the time. Like, I would love to give this game a positive review, but this thing bugs me. Like, and you know, in our case, like we made, anyway, we have a situation that's like that at the moment where I can literally go back and be like, hey, you know how you give us a positive review if we fix this thing? Well, guess what? It's fixed. And like, that's the best case when they actually say that they'll take action. Go over here.
So I don't know if you ran into this with Armello, but something that I'm sure is a frustration for a lot of developers is when there's something in the game that's causing a lot of negative reviews
Yeah.
that isn't going to get fixed anytime soon. Classic example would be like, oh, this game doesn't have online multiplayer.
Sure.
How would you go about reducing the negative impact of reviews in that case?
Yeah, that's tricky. Like, I think that there are a portion of negative reviews that you're never going to be able to like truly stifle. And I think that an example in Armello is like local multiplayer. They're like, it's a board game. Why can't I play it locally? Because it ruins the game. And a really good thing that I like to do is, I didn't speak to this much, but people cruise through reviews and a review cruise, if you will. And try and sort of understand what's going on. They're trying to like formulate an opinion, and they're looking for other opinions to justify that. Responding to reviews is also for other people that are nearby, and other people that will read the reviews. So if you keep responding, if you like really like refine a response about the issue and be like, hey, that's not possible, like because of X, Y, Z, remind them that you're a studio that has, we can't do everything, remind them of your place in the world and your studio size and the bounds in which you can operate, and what the game's intended to do. And if you keep responding to them, I think that it kind of like, it stifles the discussion from continuing forward. Like I don't think that those reviews really convert, but what you can do is stop other reviews from happening, because like someone else might be like, oh, I'm looking to see if other people feel this way, and they see your perfectly responsible, breezy response, and they're stoked with the answer. It makes sense to them. So yeah, that's the best I got. You had a question?
You already answered mine, which was that I was going to say how many people who say they'll flip actually do when you take an action, or have they already left the building?
It's hard to quantify. I don't track flips. I probably should, but it would be less than 10%. But that can be huge. Like that can actually, like, if someone takes away a negative review and turns it into a positive review, especially on Steam, because they have the recent reviews for the last month, like that can actually bump your percent up depending on the traffic and the amount of reviews that you have by like 1% sometimes. And that's a big deal. Like, especially if you're on like the cusp of a bracket. If you're on 79% and you can get that 1% to get to 80, and then you're very positive rather than like, mostly positive, then your sales, your baseline sales might actually just bump up. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, it's very possible. We think we've seen things similar to it, and I say that skeptically because I don't want to be like, someone will be like, get us to fucking very positive and we'll make $1 million. It's not the case. Game dev's hard. I don't have clear answers. Yeah.
I work for Geeks a while.
Oh, great.
And do their customer support. We actively try to flip reviews now that
Yeah.
we respond to reviews. When I say we, it's just me.
Yeah.
Support, but
The royal we.
it's more. And, the review flip, you can do it. Like a lot of people who, like, will have kids who will post a 1-star review and you're an hour's turd. And it's like, oh, thanks, that's really unhelpful.
Yeah.
There's something actually wrong. Or you're having a bad day. More often than not, they'll go, holy shit.
They're like, someone.
And they'll flip the review. So there's some that you can pick through. We get a lot of reviews. But
Yeah.
you can pick through some of those reviews and just see it's people like, and you can, with your breezy response, like you were saying, you can flip those reviews pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because you probably have a lot of knowledge about iOS and Android, probably, where my knowledge is mostly about sort of Steam.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Am I missing any hands? Oh yeah, go ahead.
So you talked about the 5% of users who do the reviews.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what 5% they are? Like, I've never reviewed a game in my life. It's a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
So it's obviously not people like me. Any idea who they are?
I don't have demographics. It would be interesting to see if they're a particular type of player. But then again, like, I'm constantly writing this interesting line of like, it's the games as a business versus games as art kind of like interesting discussion that is like very Melbourne right now. But how much do we want to compromise our integrity and our vision, and make a pure game that is of our own intention, without you know, without focusing on business. And it's like, I don't know if I want to have the information of like, you know, if I find out that like the main people that are reviewing the game are like 15-year-old boys, I don't want to start thinking about like trying to craft the game to be better for them, you know, like, so I can imagine, I'm scared to find out who that is. But yeah, I assume it is, and this is just like shooting from the hip, I assume it's a pretty general like cross section of your audience, especially if you consider that like dramatic events are a big review driver. Then like a dramatic event can happen to anyone.
The other, just more a comment than a question.
Yeah.
The really surprising thing to me was 6.6 hours or something for a negative review.
Mm.
If I'm not liking a game, I'm not there for like 30 minutes tops. I'm out of here.
Oh yeah, you should see the reviews that we've got like that are 300 hours played, and they're like, you know what? I don't like this game anymore. Like what? Like what the fuck are you doing? It's like 300 hours. Like when did you stop liking it? Like at hour 200? What have you been doing? Yeah, it's crazy.
I think someone showed me a review like that, possibly about your game, and my thought was I could have built a game in that time.
Ugh. Yeah, they could have made their own game that they like. Oh, yeah.
Do you try and like interact with your players in places that don't like directly affect your review score?
Oh, yeah.
A tweet or a Reddit post about like, you know, I found this bug in the game, and it doesn't like directly like lower your score, but it's what do you
Totally. Like I respond to everything everywhere if I feel like, if I have the time, if I see it, and if I think that it's like can provide value. Like that's sort of like my, holistically I like to think of customer service as like if we're a shop and someone walks in and is like, hey, can I get help with something? And like someone's like, oh, just ignoring you. Like it feels shit. Like I don't want to live in a world like where game dev companies are just this like omnipotent like floating orbs above the sky that you can't interact with. Like I pride myself on being someone that can be hit up. And communicated with, and a studio, that accounts for the studio too. Like if you tweet at us, if you post on our forums, if you post a Facebook message, like if you email us, it will always go to a representative at log, and if a response is warranted, and it almost definitely is, we will respond. And I mean, don't go looking for things that I've missed because it happens. I'm the sole community manager for log, so give me a break, all right? Is that it? Yeah, okay. We're wrapping up. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for hanging out.